Hello and welcome to Aspects of Writing. I'm your host, James Kelly. My co-host for today's show is Janet Corsi. Our guest is Judy McFadden, author of Life with Macduff. The topic of today's show is how to conduct yourself during a radio interview. We'd like to start with a few fun facts and quotes, and I'm going to start off with Jan. Would you like to start, please?
Hey, James, I sure would. I'm notorious for giving a bad interview. I'm an actor, and I can't help but feel I'm boring when I'm being myself. By Rock Hudson.
Okay. And Judy?
Always remember that you are absolutely unique, just like everyone else. Margaret Mead.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to read a passage here. The following was a radio interview with Australian Major General Peter Cosgrove. The female interviewer started off by saying, "So, General Cosgrove, what things are you going to teach these young boys when they visit your base?" And General Cosgrove said, "We're going to teach them climbing, canoeing, archery, and shooting." The female interviewer said, shouting, "That's a bit irresponsible, isn't it?" And General Cosgrove said, "I don't see why. They'll be properly supervised on the rifle range." The female interviewer said, Don't you admit that this is a terrible, dangerous activity to be teaching children?" Excuse me. And General Cosgrove said, "I don't see how. We'll be teaching them proper rifle discipline before they even touch a firearm." And the female interviewer again said, "But you're equipping them to become violent killers." And then General Cosgrove remarked, "Well, ma'am, you're equipped to be a prostitute, but you're not one, are you?" The radio cast went silent for 46 seconds, and when it returned, the interview was over.
I can't imagine why. However, he made his point, I think.
Yeah. If you're just tuning in, my name is James Kelly, and I'm the host of Aspects of Writing. My co-host is Janet Corsi, and our guest is Judy McFadden. Again, the topic of today's show is how to conduct yourself during a radio interview. I'm going to read a few various points regarding how to conduct yourself during an interview, and then Judy, Jan, and I will talk about each one. Okay, I'm going to start off here with number one. Now, keep in mind, these are from the internet, but they gave us some great ideas on how to discuss this. So the first one is, go to a quiet room in your home or office. Be sure staff and or family know you're on a radio interview and cannot be interrupted. And let's talk about that.
Yeah, there was something on TV. As a matter of fact, I think it was a congressman and his child burst into the room that he was in giving an interview. And then
I saw that, Jan.
Yeah.
That was quite funny, actually.
That was hilarious.
Yeah.
It was cute, but it's not something you want to do if you're trying to do an interview, especially if you're trying to promote something.
Right. Yeah, it's probably a good idea to tell people to make sure that you tell everyone in the household that you're doing this interview so they don't disrupt you and knock on a door or whatever.
Right. And your pets, because I had this problem one time. Somebody came to my door when I was doing a radio interview from home, and even though I had my door closed to my bedroom where I was doing it, somebody came to the door and the dog started barking, and there was no one there to stop him.
Yeah.
So.
And Jan, would you like to take number two?
Yes, I will.
Okay. Turn off other phones, cell phone, and anything else that could create background noise, including air conditioners and the radio, etc.
All right. And that's kind of clear on that one.
Yep. Then have a glass of water nearby. Nothing's worse than a dry mouth on a radio interview. And that's a problem that I face almost every time we do this.
So, Judy, do you have a glass of water near you?
I don't have a glass of water, but I have something else I was going to add to that. I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but take a bathroom break.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing is worse than being on the radio, or I was on a morning TV show in Vegas, and they put you in that green room, and it's really nerve-wracking, and make sure you take that bathroom break.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the first thing I do when I get here.
All right.
Jan, you're ahead of the game.
You bet I am.
Now, this is really, number 4 is really important, only because a lot of shows are live. Our show used to be, live on KLAV, and, we still do conduct live shows. So it's very important that if you're going to be late, you kind of let the host know. And we all know there's a lot of things that can cause you to be late. But here's what number 4 says. Be on time. Call the station exactly at the time they tell you, or be at your phone waiting if the station is going to call you. When you pick up the phone, be ready to go live on a second's notice or on no notice at all. You will hear the host over the phone line, so you turn your radio off to avoid hearing a distracting delay. And that happens a lot. Sometimes people, you'll do an interview, and they've got a radio on in the back trying to hear it as they're speaking, and that will not work. It will just create a horrible sound.
That's one of the things that I really enjoyed about learning from doing the mentoring Jan on your radio show, is because it's something I did not know before, and that is if you're in the room, in a room, and you're trying to talk on the phone to the radio station, you get an echoing effect.
Yeah.
And then you can't remember what it is you're saying, or it's just bizarre. So turn off all radios. Everything you need to hear, you're going to hear on your phone.
Mm-hmm. And the next one is...
Another thing, too, about being on time.
Yes.
I know that when I had to go someplace to a radio station or TV station that I hadn't been before, the day before I drive over to that locality.
Good girl.
And I time myself. And you don't have so much to worry about that out there, but here we have what we call rush hour.
Yeah.
And that's a big impact on how long it takes you to go. So, there's things, and the other thing I learned when I did public speaking is I would always arrive 1 hour earlier. I would schedule it so that I would be there, plenty of time in case something came up.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, actually, Jan had a rush hour situation getting here, for the show.
Yeah, we have two big crashes going on our two major freeways, which are the freeway that I am on to get here opens up to those two freeways, and it is literally a parking lot.
Wow.
But I started off an hour early, so I made it.
All right. Judy, would you like to take number 5?
Sure. Use a landline phone for best quality. Some stations won't allow a cell phone interview. If it is not possible to reach a landline, then use a cell phone in a stationary location and not while you are rolling down the highway, as the reception could be interrupted mid-interview.
Right. And this is a thing. I know we talked about this last night, Judy, that you don't have a landline.
We discussed.
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of people don't have landlines now. So it's kind of hard now because you're almost forced to do interviews with the cell phone. But the worst thing is I've had guests who they tell you they're going to use their cell phone, and you say, okay, but if you do, please don't put it on speakerphone. And they'll put it on speakerphone anyway. Yeah. And when they do that, they're so distorted you cannot hear them at all.
No, it's a real jumbled mess. And they tend to move around a lot, and they'll move the microphone away from their mouths, and then that changes the tone, and there's no way to fix it once it's recorded.
Right.
Once it's aired, it's over.
All right. And I'm going to let Jan take 6.
Do not use...
And another thing, too, is to have your cell phone charged, too. Make sure that it's charged.
Yes. That's a good point, actually.
Yes,
yeah,
I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the first thing I did when I got here in the room is I turned my cell phone off so that I can't be distracted by it.
All right.
Okay.
Right.
Do not use a speakerphone or headset with a microphone. Again, it is good quality sound that we're after. If you're in a studio, sit close to the microphone. Always advise guests to sit close to the microphone, no further than a fist length from the microphone.
Yeah, that's very important because we're always having to do that because most of the studios use directional mics. So, so you have to speak directly into the microphone. And the other thing is with the headset on. If you have your phone plugged into a headset with a microphone on the headset, that can cause a muffling as well.
Yes.
That can be, and we've had guests who've done that, and it really is hard. It's usually better to just speak into the phone. That's hard to do too, though, because you got to hold that phone there. We do our interviews,
Right.
so that would be harder. I can understand how that'd be difficult for the guest, but to get the best quality, that's what you need to do. But
yeah, unfortunately.
yeah, I use a headset at home. I have one though that's pretty decent quality, so that even when I'm speaking into the mic, it's really good quality. But if you get one that's just from Apple or something, or I shouldn't say the name. Too late.
Unless it's a high dollar Apple.
Right. Unless it's a high dollar. Just a simple little microphone sometimes isn't adequate enough.
Right.
So,
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And Judy, I'm going to let you take number 7.
Okay, be self-assured. Remember, you know your topic inside and out. Be confident in your ability.
I think that's a key thing for nerves reasons. You know your book, or the script you're working on, or whatever we're talking about better than anyone.
Yes.
So don't think that even if you've sent a book in advance and by chance someone has read it, that doesn't mean they know it as well as you do. You wrote it.
Right.
And you've reread it 1,000 times getting it to the editing process or through the editing process. So don't even think about what someone else knows, because you know that book frontwards and backwards. The host or the co-host doesn't.
Absolutely.
So that's why it actually helps with nerves if you can just convince yourself, I know what I'm talking about when it comes to this book better than anyone, because you do. Jan, you want to take number 8?
Number 8. Research the show and tailor your message accordingly. Just Google the host name, station, and check out the website. It is a national audience, or is it a national audience or a small town in Ohio? What is
Ohio, huh?
Ohio.
We had to put that in there.
Hey, what is their format? Is it a news talk, an NPR, or something else? You need to know. Connect with the host in a studio. Ask Ash, what?
As he says.
And then you need to learn to write if you're going to be on aspects of writing. As he says, it is key for the radio guest to make eye contact. Look at the interviewer. Mm-hmm. Speak to him or her and speak like you're talking as a friend or a spouse. Oh, no, I don't think so. If you include, if you exude confidence, I do that all the time, and comfort with the interviewer, and listeners will feel more confident and comfortable with you. Be friendly, be cordial, and act like you're just chatting with your best friend. It's okay to take a few notes, and if you glance down occasionally, remember your key points. But try not to lose your connection. And that's so true.
I don't agree with the last part.
What's that?
I don't agree that you should have notes that you're looking at. I think when we talk about be self-assured, you know your topic inside and out, be confident in your ability. Yeah. Well, I don't think if you're kind of looking at notes, that's making people feel.
It could be like what I do is I take notes often throughout the interview, and that's because someone will hit on something I hadn't thought of to ask them. And they maybe had said something that I thought, you know what, I want to know more about that. Or that leads me into another question that I hadn't prepared for that they obviously know the answer to. So I'm always taking notes when I'm in the studio.
But
you should.
You're
the host.
You're the host.
Yeah.
You should.
Okay.
That's perfect. That's a different situation, I think.
The only thing I can think of where this would be true is like when we have several people in the station doing the show all at one time, and somebody will say something like we were talking about funding, and somebody brought something up about grants, and I thought, oh my God, I started scribbling down, I need to find out more about these grants.
Right.
So,
and I just did something that's going to be later on when I said, You don't do that on the radio.
Yeah.
Well, I want to touch a few points though, where it says research the show to tailor your message accordingly, and the purpose in that, because I also have to do interviews when I write my books and go like that, is that you know a little bit about the host, you know a little bit of how they conduct their interviews, because we're all different.
Right.
I have an hour show, and whoever my guest is, they're on the show the entire hour. But oftentimes you're only on a show for 5 minutes, or you're on a show for 15 minutes or 30 minutes. It depends on the host.
Right.
That's why you need to research and find out. And then that also helps you prepare for how long, what you can say. Because you know if it's only a 5-minute interview, you need to get your information out there about your work.
Right.
And where they can find it. But if it's a half hour, you know, you have more time to do it. If it's an hour, obviously you're going to be able to.
Right.
But, you know, so that's the importance of that aspect of this sentence here, or this paragraph. Let's see. Connect with the host. That's so important as well. You can't do it on the phone, can you, Judy? You can't see me on the phone. But when you're in the studio, it's really great to make that eye contact.
Yeah.
Because a while ago
Yeah.
I asked you, Jan, something, and you answered, which happens a lot. But I was able to guard Jan like Jan let Judy answer.
Right.
You know. So, but you can't do that when someone's on a phone. So when you're in the studio, it's very important to pay attention to the host when they're speaking, because they may be looking at you and direct you, like, would you like to answer that, Jan? Or,
Yeah.
So those things are really important.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And especially when you have 3 or 4 people in the station that you're interviewing all at the same time.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to step on somebody else's
Toes,
time.
right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And Judy, I'm gonna let you take number 9.
Know exactly how much time you will have on the air as a guest, 3 minutes or 30 minutes. So you can tailor your answer to the time allotted.
Right, we
kind
kind of
of
just
touched
touched
on
that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But the other thing I wanted to say too is that when you're in something like Toastmasters and you have timed speeches a lot, you can know exactly how much time. If you're given 20 minutes at a wherever you're invited to speak, you have to practice that and time it and get it exactly down to the minute, because sometimes that's very important, because you don't want the show to go over because you didn't time what you were supposed to say.
yeah,
Right.
All right. Jen, you want to do number 10?
Number 10, practice your sound bites aloud before the interview. Communicate your main points.
Succinctly.
Is that how that's spelled?
I believe so. Go ahead.
And you should know how to spell to write.
That is right.
But that's what you have an editor for. Practice this out loud. Present the material in a way that was easy to understand. You have to consider the entire listening audience. I do consider you guys, so don't. Anytime I make a mistake, I apologize.
Well, I will tell you, this is the one thing I try to do. There are days when I'm so rushed, or we have 2 shows to do or something, and I don't always get to go over. I write the scripts, but still, when you're writing them, you still need to go over them, and especially if you have something you're supposed to be saying, you need to make sure that you're doing it well. So I always try to go over the scripts, and that's why I send them out too. It's nothing to memorize. We just use a guide. It's basically a guide, but you know exactly what we're talking about. And most of the time, our guests will reword what we're talking about anyway. They don't go verbatim. They just, and then they offer off the top of their head. But the point is that you've got to know your script. You got to know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and why.
Right.
I actually
You're
find
good at that, James. You're very good at that. You make it very, very easy for.
Well, we're going to
the,
tell a little
yeah.
story here, Judy, because do you remember the first time you were on my show?
Yes, I do.
Do you remember the incident that happened the first time you were on my show?
You mean with Don?
Uh-huh. We both love Don, so this is not a dig at all, but it just this is just an example of what we're talking about. When Judy came into the studio, we had a conference room, and we would meet in the conference room prior to going on the air and discuss the script. And or if there was any questions they had or wanted me to add something to it.
Right.
And Judy got there first, and Judy was a little quiet because we didn't really know each other, but we introduced ourselves and we spoke for a few minutes, and then in comes Don.
Yes.
He really was a wonderful guy.
Yes.
But anyway, he comes in, and do you remember this, Judy? I gave him a copy of the script because he didn't have a copy with him. He didn't print one out. So I gave him a copy of the script, and what did he do with it? He tossed it. No, remember, he tossed it across the table toward you. And he said, "What is this? S-H, blah, 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 blah." And I think it startled you at first. And then I remember...
I was intimidated. I was intimidated about the whole thing.
Because this was her first show.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. So she's probably thinking, what goes on in radio? So anyway, then I very politely told this gentleman, okay, here's the rules, Don. I know he'd been in radio for 10 years prior. He'd been in show business for 40 years as a director.
Yeah.
So I said, but I realize you have ways of doing things. And I realize you've done things your way all your life. But this is my show. And believe it or not, Judy and I can handle this just fine without you. Now, he didn't know that. I had never met Judy before. But he very calmly said, "No, you're right. This is your show." And then he sat down, and then I remember distinctly, Judy, you started defending me. Do you remember that? And you
No,
two,
I don't.
Well, you did, and you two started bickering back and forth, and I dubbed you Yin and Yang. That continued on air that day. Now, it was in a very playful way. It was very funny, actually. But from that point forward, you and Don were dubbed Yin and Yang every time you were on the show together.
Yes, I remember it very clearly.
So the point here is that, you got to practice your sound bites. And if you're going to a radio show, I don't care if you've been in radio 100 years, it isn't your show. So when someone has a format, they're doing you the favor of having you on if you're pushing a product.
Yes.
So you really need to show some respect and just adhere to whatever they're doing. You might find you're going to have fun, actually.
Yes. Yeah. I've done a few shows where they've said, okay, send us what you want to tell us. And
right.
So,
Questions, yeah.
and they say basically send us 5 sentences of what you want to tell us about your book. And
yeah, we've done that too. I mean,
Yeah.
people send me bullet points all the time,
Uh-huh.
Especially if they have an agent send it or someone,
Right.
And I do incorporate that into the script.
Yeah.
I don't mind doing that at all.
Yeah.
But what I'm getting at is that when Don wasn't used to a scripted show at all.
Right.
He was used to just bullet points, and, you would be going here, there, and everywhere. Whereas we have to be a little more scripted because we have a format we have to follow because we talk to the authors and interview them or the script writers or whomever's on the show. And then the second part of the show, we go into the learning aspect of it, where
Right.
we talk about whatever topic of the day is, which happens to be today. What is this today, Jen?
It's about how to conduct yourself at a
Prepare.
radio
Oh,
interview.
there we go. How to conduct yourself at an interview.
See,
But
now
you know
I
something, James?
What's that?
When you mentioned about that first show, we already discussed research the show, and tailor your message. Well, I got on and I researched you, and then I researched Don, and I saw all that stuff. He was a director, and it intimidated the heck out of me.
Oh,
So
I
when
never
I was-
thought of that. Yeah.
yeah.
So when I was sitting, I thought, why? You know what I thought? Why were you even having me on with him? It was just like, I'm just completely, but then like you said, when we got on the show and he kind of did a zinger at me and I just zinged him right back.
Yeah.
we took it from there.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's what I try to tell everyone, and I do that. I try to have someone who's a novice on, and then I try to have someone who has some expertise in the business on. We don't always have more than one guest, but most of the
Right.
time we have 2 or 3 guests.
Yes.
And it is because you're getting every aspect of the writing industry involved when you do that. Because you have someone who's trying to learn, has maybe gone out there and researched something, or just put their first book out and is struggling trying to figure out what to do next.
Yeah.
Then you have the person maybe in the middle who's done well, but is trying to get to the next level. And then sometimes we'll have someone at the opposite end of the level who's done quite well. And you really help each other because actually the person at the top has forgotten what it was like to be at the bottom.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so it reiterates to them, this is what I probably should be doing next because I forgot about that. So it's really great to do this. I like this show for that reason, that we get to do that.
Yeah. I've been in awe of so many of the people that have been on our show.
Yeah.
It's just, Jerry Royce was one of them.
Yeah.
And I met him prior to doing the show.
Yeah.
And I was just, I didn't want, I wanted to talk to him and didn't want to talk to him at the same time. I didn't want him to
Right.
notice me,
Yeah.
but yet I wanted to talk to him. And he turns out to be one of the nicest people you'd ever want to meet.
Yeah.
He's just as friendly as the guy next door.
Well, that's the one thing I have to say. We've always had guests that, no matter what spectrum they're from, they're pretty much even keel as far as personality, in the
Yes.
sense that they're nice.
Yeah.
We had a few stinkers, but for the most part,
Yeah.
everyone's been really nice. Jan, I'm going to let you take number 11.
Number 11. I just did number 10, but okay. See, thought I
We're working
forgot.
you today.
Be informative and entertaining without directly pushing your book, product, or service. Make the audience want more. Keep it light. Add humor whenever possible, even if it's to laugh at you.
Yeah, well, everyone gets to laugh at me because I'm always making mistakes, and I have no problem with that.
Neither.
It is important, though, to keep it light. You're there to push your product, but you're not there to shove it down someone's throat.
Right.
And if you just take your time, feel at ease, You know, you want them to want to read that book. You want them to say, I like that person. And that's the whole reason in doing the interview in the first place, because you can go out there and advertise your book, but it might not sell it.
Right.
But if you have a personality where you can go out there and sell it,
Yep.
you know, that's to your advantage.
Yeah.
So you really want to make everything light.
And we're not the 6 o'clock news.
No.
Everything that comes out of our mouth is not true verbatim.
Well, we're internet people, so we either lived it or we got it off the internet.
Right. There you go.
The good thing is we've lived a lot of it. And
Yeah.
Judy, I'm going to
But
let you.
James, you're very good at as the host. I mean, a guest on your show doesn't have to try to push her book. You're very good about having the guest explain the book or talk about it. I mean, you're the one that sort of initiates that, and that's good.
Yeah, you know, that was the one thing. The first time I was on the radio with James, when he invited me to do a little segment on mentoring me, I didn't get nervous at all until the show was over. And then I thought, oh my God, people heard me on the radio. And then I got nervous when it was over.
Yeah.
But never since that point again.
And at that time, we actually were doing the show live on YouTube.
Yes.
Twitter,
Right.
Google Plus,
Uh-huh.
you know, all those we're all
Yeah.
watching live as well.
Yeah.
But I never, ever once, to be honest with you, I'm serious. I always tell my guests, forget about that.
Yeah.
I never did think about it. After the first show, because my first show was almost a disaster, because I was like you, I was thinking too much about who's watching, who's listening,
Yep.
and I almost hyperventilated.
Yeah, I
And
can
if a
see
good
that.
friend of ours hadn't been on the show, John Long,
Yeah.
he knew me well.
Yes.
So he knew when to jump in and just save my butt, and he did.
Yeah.
And then after that, I thought I got to do something different, and that's when I came up with the script idea, because
Uh-huh.
nobody at the station had suggested I use a script. They did say bullet points, but you know, and I thought,
That's
no,
different.
I'm doing a script.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Always made it really easy to do the shows.
And Judy, I'm going to let you take number 12.
Be prepared for negative comments from the host or listeners. Have you ever had any negative comments,
Yes.
James, from call-ins or?
Yeah, I had a call in. He called in like 3 weeks in a row. You know, on my show, I don't care what kind of author you are. We will discuss your book. And we don't have a tag that it's a spirituality show. We don't have a tag that it's about drama or romance or science fiction. It's a show about writing. So I happened to have an author on who wrote a book about spirituality. And it was about their belief in Christianity and whatnot. And, you know, every author, every guest gets to speak on whatever their topic is,
Right.
or their book is,
Yeah.
for 5 to 10 minutes. It's whatever the topic is. And then sporadically throughout the show, as we're talking about our experiences and what lesson we're trying to learn that day, whether it's editing or publishing or whatever it is we're learning,
Yeah.
they'll throw in something about their book and what they learned from it. And they'll talk a minute or so more about it. And I had a listener call in and said, you know, why are you talking about that subject? Your show. And fortunately, I had a board person then. And the board person was able to pick up the phone, and they were complaining to him first. And I think the first time I said, well, put him on. And I tried to debate myself on the air. And finally, the board person cut him off. But then he called back like 2 or 3 other shows later for the same reason. And I just told the board person, if this person calls back anymore, please don't take the call. Because it can throw you off, too, as far as what
Yeah.
you're there to talk about.
Right.
And we're not a show that's there to talk about. We're a show that talks about every genre,
Yes.
to interview every author. And then we're there to teach people about this industry, because it's such a tough industry. And like what we're doing today, we're trying to give people bullet points on what you need to know before you are in an interview. So that's actually a good thing to talk about as well, because
Yeah.
if you're at an interview and you disagree with someone, because we had this on the show too,
Yes.
where you disagree with someone and their point, don't be rude about it. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
you can voice your opinion in a nice way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the best examples I can give for this is I watch The Talk. I don't know if Judy, if you do, or Jen, if you do.
I don't watch daytime TV much, but I'm familiar with the program. Though.
Well, what I like about
at
them,
work.
what I like is that those 5 ladies don't argue amongst themselves. They may disagree, but they all sit there and listen to what the disagreement is. And there may be 4 of them that say one thing and one says another, but they don't jump on that one person and say, well, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. Because there's another show out there that they do that.
Yes.
So, and that's kind of what I like to do too. It's okay if you disagree with if there's 3 people on our panel and they don't agree with everything. It's okay. You can say in a nice way why you disagree, but don't hound that person and don't continue with it. Let's
Right.
just move on.
Right.
Actually, we've had a couple guests who did that. All right, I'm going to read the next one. Never talk down to your audience. Fortunately, I don't think we ever do that.
No.
No, because
No.
first of all, I don't think about there being an audience out there. So,
Well, I think one of the things we do is we let people know you don't have to be a scholar to be a writer. You don't even have to have a
Yeah.
high school
Oh, yeah.
Trying to
diploma.
learn.
yeah, we do discuss it all, and it's true. It is
Yeah.
very true. I remember when with my first novel, I had like 2 years of college, and I never finished my degree. And I had a friend of mine who had 2 masters and a PhD, and I was attempting to write my first novel, and that person said, "You can never be a writer." And I felt like hurt by this person telling me this, and I said, "Why?" And they go, "Well, first of all, you don't have the background for it," which means I didn't have a journalistic background.
Right.
And secondly, you don't have the degree to back it up.
Right.
And so for a long time, I thought, you're wasting your time. You don't have the ability to become a writer. And then what I did is I went to some seminars at one of the universities in Atlanta, Georgia, when I lived there at that time. They had these learning annexes that you could go to in the evening, and they had one on writing. And I'm one of these kind of people who won't give up on anything. So I thought, well, I'm
Yep.
going to go and see, what they say. They'll probably tell me, stop what you're doing, you're wasting your time.
Yep.
It was just the opposite of that. Now, every person that conducted these lectures, and there were 8 of them, 8 nights in a row, were accomplished writers. But not one of them said, if you don't have a degree or you don't have a journalistic background, don't do this. In fact, it was just the opposite. And they actually told stories about one successful author who you could hardly read her penmanship, but they found someone who could rewrite it and then,
Yeah.
get it to the editor, and it was made into 2 books and 2 movies. So,
Wow.
that's
Yes.
why we don't do that to our audience. We want anyone who's out there to realize that if you have the ambition, you can find a way to get your book to print.
Well, I think you say it very clearly at the end of every show. If you can dream it, you can write it.
Yeah.
And that's what writing's all about, dreams.
Well, I'm going
And
to...
I always say that if I can write a book, anybody can write a book.
Me too. Me too. I can't even read, but I can write.
Well, we've touched on this a little bit. I'm skipping a couple of these because we've touched on them a bit. But this one we did talk about as well, and I'm going to say it again. Think of a radio interview as an intimate conversation with a friend and not a conversation with thousands. I always tell my guests to think of it as if we were in my living room talking about their work. And I always tell anyone who's never done a radio show. We just did one last week with someone, her first radio interview.
Yeah.
And that's what we discussed with her is, just pretend it's just us. And it really works because
Yeah.
we're just sitting there, the 3 of us were just sitting there just
She
talking.
was fabulous.
And she really was
I
good.
loved it.
So, and Judy, you did that too. You came across very well, and you said that was your first radio interview.
Well, I was nervous as I don't know what. I can tell you that.
But it didn't come across that way.
Couldn't have proved it by me. And I was a listener.
All right, Judy, I'm going to let you take number 17 because I've done this already on this show.
We're going to jump down to 17.
Yeah, you take 17.
Okay. Radio interviews require verbal answers, not head nodding or uh-huh.
I think I've already said a couple times tonight.
Yeah, maybe.
All right, Jen, do you want to take number 18?
Don't just answer questions. Tell listeners something you want them to know, something they would not know unless they were tuned in.
Yeah, you know what I
You
do?
bet.
I always do this as well. I spend a lot of time researching whoever's going to be on the show. And I don't know how to say this because I don't want to scare anyone from being a guest on the show. But I try to find something that they haven't told me, either in their bio or my conversation with them on the phone.
Uh-huh.
Or they may have hinted on something on the phone, then I'll go research it further. And I do that because as the listener, and especially someone who wants to know about that author, you want to know as much about that author as you possibly can.
Right.
Like we had the one guest on that I did his bio, and I continually kept reading his degree after degree after degree.
Oh, my God, yes.
But you know what? That's interesting to some people. It's because his writing, and you just finished his book, his writing is such that it really doesn't showcase his degree in a sense that you would think with a man with this degree, he wouldn't write that.
Right, right.
But not in a bad way, in a good way.
Yeah.
You know, he's very creative.
Oh, his book is magnificent.
Yeah.
I can't say enough good things about it.
In fact, Judy, you know this person we're talking about, Gregory Compass.
Well, you know, I know him very well, James. He was the editor on Life with Macduff.
Oh, he was. Oh.
Yes.
I'll be
Yes,
darned.
he's a matter. Yeah, the writers group. He may be president of it. He was.
No,
I think.
he
was.
resigned a couple months ago. But anyway,
Okay, well,
but he's an example
I
of what
know
we're
him
talking
very,
about. Go ahead,
very,
Judy.
very well. He's an editor on Life with Macduff. I know him well. He did a great job too.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Oh, I'll tell you what. This book is bar none. It's not a book that I would have ever normally picked up and read. I'm so glad I read it because now it has opened me up to realizing I'm the one that's missing out by not reading all these different genres.
Yeah.
I'm the one stopping myself from
Enjoying,
so
yeah,
much
yeah.
entertainment.
Yeah.
And it's thoroughly entertaining from beginning
What
to
was
end.
the name of his book?
Tamberlane.
Tamberlane. Yeah, that's his new book.
It's fabulous.
Yeah. And I do want to say now as well, because Stephen Murray, who's been a guest on our show, he's sponsoring this show. So I would like to say thank you to
Oh.
Stephen Murray. And he's sponsoring it. His book is The Chapel of Eternal Love.
Chapel of Eternal Love, Chapel
He
of
actually
Eternal
has
Love,
three, yeah.
Return, and
Aboard,
Murder.
Murder Aboard the Queen Elizabeth II.
Yeah.
So, we want to say thank you to Stephen for that.
Stephen, if you don't fall in love with the two love stories that he's written, the two books about romance,
Yeah.
you're never going to fall in love. I don't care what. They're just wonderful.
All right. And Judy, you want to take number 19?
Sure. Maintain a positive attitude. Be genuine or transparent. Don't fake enthusiasm or sincerity. If you're in a bad mood, cancel the interview. Don't pretend to know stuff you don't. I can't imagine calling James and saying I dropped something on the floor and there's a big mess here and I don't think I want to do the interview tonight.
Well, sometimes we have to look at these interviews like I used to work in one of the hotels as a server in room service.
Yeah.
And when what you had to do is, I don't care what kind of bad mood you were in or someone downstairs made you in a bad mood, when you knocked on that door, when that door opened, you had a smile on your face and you
Yep.
were the happiest person in the world.
Yep.
And this is a business, and you kind of have to think of it that way. So I'm a little bit not agreeing with this when it says, to cancel the interview. If you know you have an interview, you don't want to really cancel unless there's an absolute emergency. But you do need to have a positive attitude. So whatever was going on in your life for that one interview, whether it's 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or an hour, you throw that out the door.
I think if you're a fiction writer, you don't have any trouble throwing it out the door because you can always become one of your characters.
Yeah.
You don't have to be
Yeah.
you.
True.
I do that at work a lot. They think that Jan works there.
They think she's crazy.
They could be right.
But you're supposed to be positive and professional. I
Yes.
think it's just being professional. As you said, James, no matter what your job is, or even if you're on an interview, you still need to be professional.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to read number 20. Reread the press release or pitch that got the book since the host is going to be using it as a starting point. Often the host will tie into the topic or discussion about the show. Well, what I do is I always interview the author first anyway. So we always talk about their book. I give them a chance to tell me about it. They're better at telling it than I am because it's their book. So, I always turn that over to the author themselves to talk about it.
Yeah.
And even if it's a movie, because we've had people who wrote movies,
Right.
We let them talk about it because
Yeah.
they know that better than I do.
Yeah.
So I don't pretend to know something that I don't know, and I never will. Jan, take 21, please.
Okay. Whether the interview is live or taped live, if you stumble or flub up, just keep going. often what you perceive as a mistake, the listeners won't even notice. And, it's kind of like ice skating and that sort of stuff and singing. You just keep going.
Let me tell you, if I had a dime for every time I flubbed up,
We'd be
I'm
rich.
the world's worst when it comes to names. But the good thing is that because I always speak to my host or my guest before we ever go on air, usually a day or two at least before, if I screw up their name, I'm screwing it up when I'm talking to them for the first time. So I always tell them, if I get it wrong again, just correct me on the air. I have no problem with you correcting me on the air. If I say a word wrong, just correct me. I have no problem with you correcting me on the air.
Me either.
I'm not the smartest cookie, in the cupboard, so...
Well, the beauty of it is they can't reach through the microphone and smack us.
Well, that's true, too.
See? So we're good.
All right. Judy, would you like to take number 22?
Ask for an MP3 of the recording before the interview. Often, if you ask ahead of time, the producer will record the interview, and then you can use it on your website. Be sure to listen to it later and critique your performance.
This is...
Well, we don't really... We have YouTube, don't we, James? And
Yeah, we have
stuff
YouTube.
on YouTube.
Right, and plus now on my new website, I do have the audio there that you can listen to. So if you have a recorder on your computer and you're listening to the audio, you can just record it. I let people do that. I have no problem with that whatsoever. And it says to be sure and listen and critique your performance. When I was at KLAV, it was very rare that I went back and listened to a show because we were live and, I never had a reason to go back and listen to the entire show. Well, when we started this new studio, we had to start pre-recording in the beginning. So I had to go back, and plus I had to go back and listen to some shows that had to be re-edited.
Yes.
And, oh my gosh, I found so many errors on my part. A few I made tonight already. Yeah.
These are planned errors, by the way, so that you all understand what you need to learn to do.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
They're not planned errors.
Yeah, but you're your own worst critic. You know that.
Yeah, but in a good way, I think. I mean, there are habits that we have that sometimes we need to break. Like I just did. But as far as asking for the MP3, in our case, like Judy said, we record our show. We post it on YouTube, so you can go to YouTube and download it. In addition to that, from this point forward, actually for the last 5 shows, they are archived on my website at aspectsofwriting.com, so they can go there and listen to the archived show and record them from there if they need to.
Right.
Or for that matter, they could even do a link to there.
Yeah.
So, which I would love.
James, you know what I do?
What's that?
When I miss Dawn, I go and pull up YouTube when we were on your show together.
Yeah.
They're on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I like.
Why haven't we put our YouTube stuff on my website?
Well, why haven't you?
Well,
I don't have control of your website anymore.
You may think you don't,
I
but
don't.
I can't get into it at all.
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah,
we'll have to research
we'll
that.
figure it out.
Okay. All right. I'm
I
gonna
got
read the
nothing
next
to add.
one.
Well, my website was hacked,
Oh no! What'd they
and
do?
I had to take it down.
Oh,
no.
And by a very big host, the host of websites, it's very big, and it was hacked.
Well, I've had mine done.
And
Mine was hacked years ago. Yeah.
Oh my
So that
I
gosh!
took it down.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Judy.
Well, number 23 is I prepare questions for our authors ahead of time. If you have specific questions you want asked, put them in the press kit or send it ahead of the interview. Oftentimes, the radio host will read those questions right in order. Do this to help the host in case they didn't have a chance to read the book, which is often the case, and that's
Right.
certainly my case. So, yeah, you really should, if you have specific questions, but the one thing I'm going to advise you on, and I've had this happen recently, I've had people on 2 shows, not too far in the past, who've sent me questions up until the very evening before the show.
Yes.
And, everyone in our show gets a script. We send it to them. I don't care where you are. We've had guests in Australia,
Right.
Hawaii.
Yes.
Wherever they are, they get a script so they know what's going on in the show. So now I have to stop what I'm doing. They're in different time zones. We've had them in
Yeah.
Australia, Paris, London, and
Yeah.
we now have to send them the script. They might be getting that script in the middle of their night and get up in the morning and not even think about printing it out. So if you have specific things you want us to talk about, or you want the host to read, about your book, you need to make sure they know this in advance. And that's the other reason why I call my guests, because I always ask them that. Is there anything specifically you want me to put in that script? Because if there is, please email it to me, and I will make sure and get it there. So that's really important, and that's more of a courtesy to the host than anything.
Yes. And, amazingly enough, even if you read over the script and you want to add something to it, or you don't really need to necessarily contact the host.
Right.
It will usually work its way into the conversation.
Well, that's true too,
So
but
you
they
don't-
might not know
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I remember our Australian gentleman, and it was New Year's Eve, and we caught him at midnight his time, 2 o'clock our time.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
really unique because we got to celebrate New Year's for all day.
Was that Mark Bowman?
Yeah.
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 Okay, yeah.
He's doing great, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
following him.
We need to get him back on the show.
Yeah.
And Anthony Karakai as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They're always posted on our Facebooks. If you don't hear back from the radio show after your first query, do it again. And that's real important because I have people sending me stuff all the time. And it isn't on purpose, but if 2 or 3 days go by, I haven't opened the mail, or I may have opened it and then saved it as unread. Things happen in life, whether it be here at the studio or home, and a week will go by and you will have forgotten about that guest. Not on
Right.
purpose,
Right.
but things do happen.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with keeping up with the show. And on our site, you have a contact place. So you can go back and say, hey, James, did you forget about me? Just wanted to make sure. Do I still have a chance of being on your show? And I'm never offended by that. You could probably email me 1,000 times. I will eventually get around to getting you on the show because I'm one of those, I don't like to pass people up.
Right.
But one show we had, I'll never forget, this was just a couple of weeks ago. We thought we weren't going to have people for the show. Something happened.
Yes.
So then I thought, well, I contacted this person. They didn't get back to me. So I contacted someone else. They didn't get back to me. Then I contacted a third person, and they didn't get back to me. And guess what? In one day, they all got back to me.
You're right.
And then they added someone else into the mix
Right.
So we had a
a
huge
full
show.
house. We had a full house.
because I don't want to turn anyone away.
As a matter of fact, I even told James, I'll go back to the office and call you,
I said,
and
"No."
I'll be on the telephone with you instead of in the studio because it was a full house.
It was definitely a full house.
It was fun though. God,
Yeah, it was fun.
What
Yeah.
a great bunch of people.
So, that's why don't be afraid to just let us know. We'll try and get you on the show. And that's with all shows because I've done shows as well as an author, and you do sometimes. You have to just keep writing them. It isn't anything that you're trying to be rude or anything. It's just we don't always have time to answer every single request right away. All right. And let's see what's next here. Jan, you want to read number 25?
25. I suggest you find a way to speak with the host prior to the interview. Send the host an email with your phone number and ask if they can give you a call. And that really is a good idea.
Yep.
Because there's so many times they really want to get something mentioned that you don't know anything at all about.
The reason why I really prefer that, I don't care if you get the guest or Judy gets the guest or whomever, it's great for them to email me, but I also need to talk to them. So
Yeah.
I always, if I can get their email, then I'll email them and say, please give me a call. The reason for that is twofold. One, it gives me a chance to ask them what questions would you like me to ask, or is there anything you need to know about our format? And two, I get to get a feel for what they're like if I can feel what they're like on the phone,
Right.
it gives me an idea of what they're going to be like during the interview.
Right.
So if they have a soft point, I know where to help that author or guest out, or a weak point. And let's just say, for instance, whatever the excuse would be, whether, if there's someone who likes to talk a lot like me, I have to know how to stop them so that someone else can start to talk.
Right. Or if they sound like paint drying, you know what to do there too.
Right. We ingest humor into that somehow, or inject humor. So, and you're good at that.
Another thing too is that I think you can communicate better when you talk to someone on the phone. Nowadays, it's more texting or emailing, but
Absolutely.
when you actually, and James, you're really good about that. You'll call and you can talk to someone, and I think you can communicate much better.
Yeah. We did have an incident a long time ago, several years ago, where we had a guest on, and I know what happened. The guest thought they were going to be the only one on the show. And in the last minute, someone called me, I think it was you, Jen, and said, I found someone who would like to be on the show. And this person was an expert. They'd been out there in the business. They had a book out for a while. And the other one was a newcomer, had never done radio, had never had their book out there. They just finished their book. So I thought, well, that would be cool to have them on because that's what our show's about, to learn from each other.
Yeah.
When that other guest found out, the experienced one found out there was another guest being on the show, they didn't express this to me in advance, but they were very irritated with that whole situation. And behind the scenes, it wasn't so pleasant. We pulled it off on the radio. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
But don't you know, you've got to understand that when you're going to be a guest of someone's show, things are going to happen for a reason. And in our case, it's because we like to teach people something. We want to show them a new way of doing business, let's say. So, you know, you have to be prepared as a guest for anything. I was on Don Barnhart's show.
Right.
And, you know, he'd been on my show many times, and I was shocked the first time I was on his show. He cut me off in 4 minutes. Because he had other things to move on to.
Yeah.
But you know what? But you can't be upset with it. You just move on. You know?
Yeah.
We had him back on a dozen more times after that, probably. But you know, the thing is that you know everyone does their show differently, and you as the guest have to be prepared for whatever's coming up, and just accept it.
Yeah. It's like going
Don't
from.
throw a tantrum. You're there to promote your book.
What? But I wanna.
Well, you know what I mean. You're there to promote a book, so you really should conduct yourself accordingly.
Yes. I
agree.
And 28. I'm gonna let you take that, Judy.
You want to go down to 28? The date and time of the interview and what time zone. That's a good one for me, James. Because
you're in Ohio.
Yeah, it's dark here. I mean, the blinds are closed here. And so we're in a different time zone, completely.
Yeah.
And another thing, James, when I was talking to you, and you said about the show was going to be on Friday, and then you happened to mention Thursday, and I thought, wait a minute, I thought it was, and you said, we're going to have the interview Thursday, but it's going to broadcast on Friday. So, that could have been a little mix-up, with me. But you do have to know exactly the date and the time and even the time zone.
Yeah, and actually, we're going to backtrack just a little bit because I do want to touch that point. I believe, Jan, where was that? Oh, well, 26. That's important. You want to read that one?
Things you should know. Yes. Radio stations' call letters, very important, like WOR, KXAM, WLW. The frequency of the station, that is, like FM 96.
Or AM.
Or AM 2010, or Power 92. Their complete address, their phone number, the fax number, emergency numbers. Keep them handy, because if you can't get a hold of the host, you might be able to get a hold of somebody else at the station to make that connection.
Actually, that's a good point all the way around, not just for the show, but even for the station.
Yeah.
You always want to make sure someone's there to take a call, or that it's forwarded somewhere.
Yeah.
Because things go wrong.
Yeah.
In this industry, it happens all the time.
Yes.
So you got to be prepared, and especially if you're a guest, you may have mistook what station it was or what time.
Right.
But if you're looking for that show, let's say it's Aspects of Writing. If you know to get AM FM 24/7, you can go there and see I'm there. But if you didn't know it was AM FM 24/7, you don't know where to go.
Right.
You can go and look up you can go and look up Aspects of Writing on the internet, and you'll eventually find it.
Right.
But you might have already supposed to have been on the air.
Yes.
So you need to get that information in advance, and I always send my information to people. I send them my cell phone. I want them to know, and please call me if you have a problem, because that phone's with me 24/7.
Yep.
So, those are important things. You really need to know that. But if you do know the station and the interview you're doing, if for whatever reason you lose that email, because we all know the emails go down too, or you lose that phone number, you can always go look it up online.
Yeah, there's another place to get it.
So that's why it's important.
Yep.
Okay. Yes.
Ask for the link of the interview. And we just kind of have hit this all over the place tonight, because some will do 4-minute spots, some will do a 15-minute spot, some will do 30, and you're devoted to that segment. My show, you're on the show for the entire hour. It doesn't matter if I have one guest or 5 guests. You're all on for the entire hour, because I want to know about your work, and then we're going to talk about the topic that day. And a group discussion is the best way to get the best out of all of it.
Yes.
You want to hear every aspect of what they're talking about.
Yep.
So
that's what makes your show so. That's what makes your show so good. And so informative.
Well, some people have asked me, are you going to change the format when I went back on the air? And I said, no, I like my format. Really, I like it because I like it.
It's easy for the guests to follow as well. And because you do give everybody equal share. Mm-hmm. Even if whether there's 2 people on or 25 people on, everybody gets equal share. So everybody gets an opportunity to be on the radio. And it's cool. It's really
and
neat.
the show was created to help people.
Yes.
So that's why we want that part of the show, the last segment of the show, to be about helping people and telling them where they can go and what they can do and inspire, enlighten, and intrigue. That's what we're trying to do. All right. We're getting close to the end of the hour here.
Oh, no.
If you are on with our guests, always be courteous to them and their time. And we've already discussed that a little bit about being courteous to them, but you also have to respect their time. Like, for instance, it's easy for us to get caught up in our books.
Yes.
And we want to talk about them forever.
Yeah.
And some people have written more than one book. Like, I've written more, but a lot of people have written dozens of books. So you have a tendency to want to carry on. So you've got to learn that pick a subject, pick a genre, or pick a book. Mm-hmm. Especially if it's the one just coming out, and talk about that one.
Yeah.
And and then you can mention a couple more maybe, but don't go into detail about them, because you do want to be courteous to every person that's going to be on that show.
Yes.
I script my show, but there's no time limit on anything. It doesn't tell you how much time it's going to spend to say that or do this.
Yes.
So it is important to pay attention to that.
Yeah, and with the script too, people can see how much more there is going to be after that particular portion. So they know that, like, if you've asked them a question, they can't spend 30 minutes answering that question, because there's another half hour of other questions being asked other people, which by the time you finish asking questions, they don't have time to answer them because he
That's
used
true.
up all the time.
Well, I'm going to read the last 2 because we're running out of time.
Oh, darn.
We skipped a few, but number 32 is your bio. One of the most important things you can do is to prepare the interviewer to interview you. If you have a website, be sure the host knows where to get your latest bio and relevant information. It's smart to have a specific page, especially for talk show hosts. And I always tell anyone who's been on the show, if they don't have an author's website, they need to really think about getting an author's website.
Absolutely.
Or at least a Facebook page where you can, somewhere where you can be found.
Yeah, get it started.
Yeah. And then number 33 is listen to the audio after the show is aired. Few people enjoy listening to tapes of their interviews. Nonetheless, doing so can help you identify and fix problem areas. We did discuss that. At one point in my career, I was surprised to hear that I said or a few dozen times during my interviews. The self-awareness allows me to decrease the uhs. In other words, like I just did, I diminish a problem I otherwise would not have known about. And we're all guilty of that. We just have habits.
Oh, yeah. And that's the way I
with
answer everything.
Toastmasters, they have something called an count-er.
Aha.
And when you do your speeches, they count the number of times that you do an or an ah.
Oh, my God, they'd have a heyday with me.
Oh, no. Hey, do you get paid for it? We could finance a TV show.
It makes you very aware of that, and you're not aware at first of doing it. And then after you have, in front of the whole group, count the different times that you did it, you soon learn to cut it off.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we are running out of time, unfortunately. I hate it when we have to get down to the last minute of the show.
But we do have to get to the last minute of the show.
All right, I'd like to thank our guest, Judy McFadden, along with my co-host, Janet Corsi. You can log on to our shows at youtube.com/aspects of writing. We post all of our past shows there. We're now also posting all of our shows on aspectsofwriting.com.
Yes.
I actually have several links there. I always have an audio for the show that we just did, which this one will be on there tomorrow after the show airs.
Yes.
And then we do the video version. We post that on our website as well. But
Yes.
then we also have links where you can go to YouTube. So you can either go directly to YouTube to Aspects of Writing, youtube.com/Aspects of Writing, or you can just go to our website and get the link from there. And then, see a little bit more, I think.
And sometimes you might want to watch the YouTube end of it just to see whether or not James and I are dressed alike.
Well, Sometimes we are. One show we were, not too long ago. Looked like we were on a trip in Hawaii or somewhere.
Now people are going to watch the thing so they can just see what we're dressed like.
Well, Judy, thank you so much for being on with us. We love you so much.
Oh, missed you a
Well,
whole
thank
bunch.
you for having me. It's really an honor to be on your show, and I'm just so glad there's someone out there that is doing something to help the writers and somebody that we can look up to. So thank you very much.
All right.
Appreciate you.
And I just want to remind everyone, this is your host, James Kelly, reminding you, if you can dream it, you can write it. Thank you.
Great show, James.